YouTube React content time. Let's take a look at Faker yugioh's video here. I still like link summoning. It has about 10% dislike, which is very funny. So here's the thing with link summoning. I'll be honest, from my personal perspective, link summoning is around about the time and era where getting super hardcore involved in the meta, like top tier competitive gameplay of Yu-Gi-Oh, I kind of semi lost my interest. I've dabbled in and out of a couple of formats. I got my, first ever premier event top during, link summoning in like 2022 or whatever. But ever since, like, link summoning has created a game that is so fast, so quick, and the turns are so long, I personally feel like that the game took a direction that I wasn't very pleased with, which is why I kind of stick to doing slower formats, sealed formats, dumb, stuff like that. So obviously this person is wrong and is stupid, blah, 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 but let's say what they have to say.
I don't know that link summoning has actually done enough to warrant its general perception among the Yu-Gi-Oh community. Scroll through any comment section on any video rude enough to mention Nightmare Unicorn, and you're bound to encounter a number of people who still think comments like "special summoning used to be special" are bold insights into the state of the game and not just recycled Facebook.
When did special summon stop getting, being special? I guess it depends on the format, but I don't know, 2015? Certain decks, kind of spit out monsters way too quick, like Dragon Rulers. But then the game kind of slowed down after Dragon Rulers for, a year and a half. Cyber Dragon, yeah, remember 2100, by the way, can I just say, some of you are very, very young and won't remember this, but there definitely was a period in time where people unironically complained about Cyber Dragon causing the game to go to dirt. And then 2005, people complain about Invasion of Chaos, etc., etc. The game has always had people complaining about the pace, etc., etc. So, anyway.
Book humor. That being said, the view and weather is pretty nice from my island that I'm apparently chilling on, because Konami itself has taken a rather significant step towards agreeing with the Nightmare Unicorn phobic among us, and has created an entirely new alternate format where links, and pendulums, but we'll get to those another day, are completely banned. While, trust me, I'm unbelievably excited for Genesis, I do have one concern. When the anti-Linkariboites in our ranks actually show up and play, and discover that even without link monsters, Yu-Gi-Oh is not the 20-turn back-and-forth game of incremental advantage they imagined in their heads and never existed, what's next? Today's video is going to...
That's a good point. I mean, Radiant Typhoon, Onomat, very fast, very quick decks that are basically just ending the game by turn 3 or 4. So, yeah, the link summoning is not exactly the reason why the game is so fast and all that kind of stuff. However, link monsters do contribute to it.
Give you a brief discussion on link summoning. Before we begin, let the record show that I am an Altergeist player, so if my points are too strong...
I love the way that he said that. Like it was like a very embarrassing admission. Like it was, I just, it's like he's coming out to say he's like vegan or something.
And you need some other reason to disregard them.
Yeah, it was like a slur or some shit.
But what is link summoning? Well, in case you've been in the midst of a pearly, sleepy memory for the past 8 years, wake up, it's been wild. Link monsters are a form of extra deck monster introduced with 2017 starter deck Link Strike. These wild blue monsters linked into the Vrains alongside Playmaker and friends in the new main series anime Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains.
Okay, we have a little bit of an explanation as to what link summoning is. Bobbity boobity bobbity.
Link summoning also introduces a change to the game itself with the establishment of the extra monster zones.
So just for context, by the way, there's some people who legitimately don't know how to still link summon correctly. The amount of times that, for example, I was using a dead Apollousa. By dead, I mean like 0 materials or 0 attack points. The amount of times that I was I've been playing on stream and trying to use a 0 attack Apollousa, and then someone be like, "You can't use Apollousa; it's too high." A lot of people genuinely until today still don't realize that you can use link monsters are their link rating or 1. Thank you, Nefroff. Appreciate the raid. Thank you.
Link monsters came equipped with brand new arrows. Placement of the arrow was unique to that monster, and the number of arrows was dictated by that monster's link rating, a mechanic that replaced levels or ranks and was indicated by the number on the bottom right of the card where the defense rating needs to be, as links could be placed in defense position. If you're waiting for the part 2 or the actually keep waiting. That's basically it. If you wanted to summon a Stardust Dragon, you had better stick that baby in the EMZ, unless you had a linker bell to stick to.
We got some history here back when
this was done in theory to slow the pace of
2020
late pendulum format decks like.
Actually, no, it was just immediately on Link summoning release. Yeah, God, those were the dark days. In 2017, extra deck monsters had to go to a Link Arrow or Link Zone, like the EMZ. And then they removed that in 2020, which was, guys, it was half a decade ago. You know that? Master Rule Revision was half a decade ago.
Pepe, and going back even further to Synchro Spam Maxi challenge strategies, had pushed the pace of the game to its limit, and the idea to restrict the summon of extra deck monsters behind this new Link Arrow wall was a good one, though it had many players skeptical. For good reason, early Link format was an absolute mess. Players were forced to play the worst cards you'd ever read in your entire life to enable the most bare-bones extra deck plays. Meanwhile, a deck like Zodiac could easily circumvent this restriction by special summoning back detached, properly summoned Xyz monsters from grave and extending from there. It was a nightmare. Speaking of which, the Nightmares.
It was not bad.
2018's Flames of
like, yeah,
Destruction,
it kind of cheated the rules of it, but like
history for other
it wasn't a bad format
reasons. The Nightmares were the first card to really break this mechanic wide open. What's the point of slowing the game down and using links as a roadblock to special summon spam when you're creating overpowered links that people want to be summoning in the first place? This was unfortunately inevitable because creating a mechanic that exists solely so players have less fun and have to jump through more hoops to make the plays they want to play was never going to be popular. Nightmare Phoenix meant that any player could have the out for your strategy crucial spell trap on hands at all times. Unicorn was non-destruction removal at the drop of a hat, and cards like Nightmare Goblin and Mermaid were major players in the unbearable 20-minute wheel.
The thing is, like, you could argue a lot of this is just like part of the extra deck power creep, right? Because even before Link monsters, you know, very easy to just out any problem card, overlay into Castel, spin it, synchro into Scrap Dragon. Historically, we have so many examples of like generic extra deck cards that would deal with issues. But obviously, like Link monsters being so generic, so easily accessible, you don't need to play a deck that can make 8 synchros and then get access to tuners. You don't need to play a deck that is 4 stars only. Any deck in the entire game can make a Nightmare Phoenix or a Nightmare Cerberus to out-problem cards. So, the way that I like to explain Link monsters is that imagine you could synchro summon, but the level requirement was like kind of vibes-based. Like, you could, like, maybe it was like a standard deviation of like 1 or 2. Like, let's say you could synchro summon into an 8 by using a 4 and a 4, or, you know, you can plus or minus a little bit. Like, you can go like a 5 and a 5. 10, that's close enough to 8, right? Because that's how generic it is to make a Link monster, right? On top of that, you don't need the tuner. You don't need the matching level, like an Xyz material. There's no requirement, like, for, like the tuner, I guess I already said that. And also, imagine you could Xyz summon with 2 level 4s to make a rank 4, but one of those level 4s could also be a different number if you needed it to. I guess the better example in that would be synchro summoning. Like, you could synchro into an 8 with a 4 and a 4, or, you know, one of them could maybe be treated as like a 1, and you could also go into a 5. Right? Because that's how, like, Link monsters are. Because, like, a Link 3 can be a Link 3, but it also could be a Link 1. A Link 2 can also just be a Link 1. So the manipulation of the levels is way too open-ended and generic for basically every deck in the game. That's why Link monsters are so powerful. I think it's just their ease of access and genericness.
Spinning turns that nearly killed the game. 3 of the 6 Nightmare cards are banned. Half of them. That's insane. Other than, like, tier...
Wait, 3 of them? Goblin... Griffin. What's the third one? Oh, Mermaid. It's funny because all of them are back now, no? Depending on the format, I guess.
and Dragon Ruler back in the day. Is there any other archetype of card that has half of its monsters banned? Aside from that, the ban list is very heavily occupied by Link monsters more broadly, for 3 other largely related reasons. Link ones, tokens, and special summoning from deck. If a Link monster is on the ban list, chances are that it does one or more of these 3 things. If you...
This card is, like, unbelievable. It's funny because I don't know how good it would be today. Can you imagine how good Link Cross would be without Halka Fibrax? Obviously, it would be a lot weaker. But at least, like, at its peak and at the time, my god, this card was unreal.
If you've ever had the misfortune of observing, or God forbid, playing in a game of Magic the Gathering, you've seen the damage that tokens can do to an unprepared card game. Without heavy restrictions like Sword Soul, a token represents pure advantage in the truest sense. And unlike Xyz monsters, which can't use tokens as overlay units, or Synchros, which require tuners, and so make using tokens more complicated, though they
also, I guess that's another positive about Link summoning, right? Xyz materials have a massive restriction in that you can't overlay tokens. Like that is like the newest, latest summoning format, I guess, other than Pendulum, when Link monsters were released, right? So Xyz were just so much more restrictive because you can use tokens for Link monsters. They've learned very recently to stop doing that. So you'll find that a lot of cards, like for example SP Little Knight, requires 2+ effect monsters. A lot of cards nowadays just say 2+ effect monsters. So they have kind of realized that that is absurd. But I mean, this was another reason why early Link summoning was absurd. Like, any sort of token generation was absolutely just free printing of advantage.
Did, Link monsters very often had no such requirement. You see, in a way, Link monsters are Yu-Gi-Oh! Every Link monster states quite clearly what kind of monsters can be used to summon them. There's no gimmick, there's no questions to be asked, it's cut and dry. The card does what it says it does. Nightmare Phoenix requires 2 monsters with different names. Link Spider requires 1 normal monster, which tokens are counted as.
Buku.
This meant that with some easy comboing, a previously uninspiring board of Scapegoat tokens could become the Link 4 of your dreams. Was this an oversight? Did Jim Konami...
You know, with enough unbanned cards on the extra deck, Scapegoat is just the best card ever printed.
Just forget? Or was this an intended game mechanic? The answer to this question has been indirect and vague, but it's probably a combination of all 3. Link 1s are a controversial element of the mechanic.
Okay, not that one.
A Link monster requires a total number of material whose Link rating adds up to that monster's Link rating. A Link 2 requires 2 Link ratings worth of material, and all Link monsters can either be treated as their respective Link rating or a Link 1, never a number in between. Unicorn can be a 3 or a 1, but never a 2, for the purposes of a Link summon. This means that a Link 1 monster, in most instances, requires a single material for its Link summon. While some Link monsters like Emperor Charles or Zelantis shake this up and have created some interesting and unfortunately less competitive Link 1s, by and by, most Link 1s in the game's history have been able to be summoned off a single point of material, transforming any appropriate main deck monster or token into full combo for some of the strongest decks in the game's history, or putting in graveyard without the need of battle or card effect.
I think my, like, you know, when you consider, like, what is the most broken Link 1 card or a combo in the game, do you know what one, like, comes to my mind? It's absurd that Sangan was just, like, everything. That one specifically, I think, is insane. Because at the best combo for Sangan was normal Sangan, make Mirage, search Arborea, and even with the errata of Sangan, you had the ability to circumvent the restriction of not being able to activate that monster effect. Because Arborea is just a summoning condition, and it's a tuner. And so Sangan, linked into Mirage, get Arborea special, make Hulk. Like, that to me was unbelievable. You know? And that's when I realized very quickly, I mean, I guess I've always thought it, but like, that's when I thought, like, come on, the Link monsters absolutely need more restrictions.
cards that really want to be there. The complications of Link 1s really could warrant their own video, which I might make. But let's end here by
like
saying
Hulk
that
by
they were a
itself
lot to
like
deal
caused.
with. But hold on, didn't I say I
bans.
like Link summoning? All I've done so far is list perfectly valid reasons why the mechanic was frustrating. Well, viewing Link summoning in a vacuum.
All right, here we go. This is where the opinion comes in now.
Many of the criticisms of Link summoning are actually just criticisms of Yu-Gi-Oh.
So this is where we mute the video and go wrong, 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 wrong.
Don't believe people when they pretend that link arrows or ratings or zones are complicated or too hard to understand. That's ridiculous. To me, it's like saying Monopoly is too complicated because the value of a property goes up the more of a specific color property you own. Or that while you typically have to add...
Okay, but that means that... That's not a criticism of Monopoly, but it is like objectively true that like the more property is involved, the more calculations and multiplicative numbers are involved. Therefore, it is more complicated. It is just simple addition usually, but like, you know, it's it does get more complicated objectively. It's just like it's not necessarily a anyway. Specifics of the Monopoly analogy are whatever.
An egg right away in a certain recipe. In this variation, you have to wait until there's a certain temperature. Things have rules and natures and need to be understood. And to me, anyway, it feels like it's only in Yu-Gi-Oh! That we have to apologize that new players actually have to learn things. There are complications in Yu-Gi-Oh! As it relates.
Ah, come on. I mean, yeah, it's true. We do have to apologize, but it's also like, you know, the angle that he's taking, it's like, oh, God forbid Yu-Gi-Oh! Players have to learn how to play Yu-Gi-Oh! It's like, well, I mean, yeah, but there's a difference between, God forbid you have to learn the game that you're picking up, but also, like, there's a kind of critical mass of time invested versus proficiency. You know, like, you could play Yu-Gi-Oh! For 10 hours, and you'll still be completely terrible. Like, absolutely terrible. You could play Pokemon from scratch for 10 hours. You're not going to be winning regionals, but, like, you're basically going to be fairly proficient. Like, yeah, you might not know the ins and outs of the format and the metagame, but, like, the mechanics of your cards, the combos, quote-unquote, like, you will be at, like, a competent level. I just don't think you'll ever reach that in Yu-Gi-Oh! Without, like, hours and hours and hours and hours of dedication.
To game states and chain links and all manner of issues, but those have existed since the beginning of the game. And needing to be careful when to summon SP Little Knight because...
But anyway, just to piggyback off that last point, you know, that's not necessarily a good or bad thing, but I think there is a point where that number needs to be high enough where it's interesting and involved, and you're learning something, you're getting better at the game. But it also needs to be low enough that it isn't just like a frustrating experience where you're just bashing your head against the wall. Like in Yu-Gi-Oh!, if you're learning from scratch, so much of the game is like playing almost like you're not just learning how to beat someone in like a duel when you're in your day 1, day 2, day 3 of playing Yu-Gi-Oh! You're like, because I find I struggle with this as well whenever I pick up a new deck. It's like half the battle is just learning how my deck works. Because decks are so advanced and so complicated. Compared to Magic and Pokemon and Hearthstone, decks are only so complicated as the resource available to you on that turn. Right? A turn in Magic can only be so complicated on turn 1. Because you're restricted by a resource. Right? Compared to Yu-Gi-Oh! Where Yu-Gi-Oh! Is at its most complicated on turn 1. Because you have maximum amount of cards available to you. And flowchart diagram, decision trees, and pathways to go down, right? I think that's where like the biggest barrier to entry is. It's like, not only do you have to like learn the mechanics and basics of the game, actually learning your deck is a trial in and of itself.
It doesn't have a downwards pointing arrow isn't in the top 30 most complicated things about this game. Special summoning can be scary and frustrating when your opponent does it too much, and headache-inducing when you are expected to do it if you haven't read your cards, but to lay that at the feet of link summoning just because you've never read a Flower Guardian is silly. Look, I know I'm killing you guys with the analogies, but like as a lifelong sports fan, this sounds exactly the same to me as old head NBA fans complaining about the state of the game nowadays. All Boston does is shoot threes. Curry is soft. It was better back when my knees didn't hurt so much and I didn't wake up hungover. I'd say that that's happening to us, but...
Well, I don't know about basketball, but the football analogy for me is like, unironically, like, this is how I feel. Maybe I am an old head, but I kind of don't really like football anymore. Soccer for you Americans. The way the game is developed now is very methodical. It's all about possession gameplay. It's all about maintaining that possession. There's no flair anymore. There's no running and challenging your opponent, which is why Messi and Ronaldo were so popular. They would challenge opponent. They would run through people. They would run past people. I grew up with the likes of like Ronaldinho, you know? Nowadays, like, God, you ever watch like a peak Pep Guardiola game with like Man City? Like, holy fuck, dude, it's boring. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yu-Gi-Oh! Ain't been out nearly long enough to warrant that kind of behavior. And there's no way that any of us are that
death
old.
by a
Our
thousand
neuroplasticity
passes,
is
exactly.
At least
Like,
still somewhat there. If you don't like Yu-Gi-Oh! Anymore,
they still do it, bro. It's
that's
nowhere
fine.
near
I
how it
get
was in the early
Some days
2000s.
on Master Duel make my eyes want to escape from my skull.
Like, you watch an
But
El
don't be the
Clasico
crab
from
at the
like
bottom of the
2005, it
bucket
is night and
pretending
day.
not to understand. The future of Links is
Anyway, football aside, Link summoning, right? Messi is Halka-Fibrax, Ronaldo is Link Cross, right, guys?
There's no real evidence that Konami's moving away from the mechanic, like they have with Pendulum. Malice was just a deck like a handful of months ago, after all. And it's so obvious they're in love with the mechanic from a design perspective, with how much fun they have with all the different arrow-specific effects. At the same time, the decision to remove Links from Genesis format seems like a concession to a group of players that will largely not appreciate the gesture. It's already been proven that Genesis will not be some T-set pass meta. Good. I can play GOAT for that, and
why is it impressive that I know Guardiola?
I love the
like,
deck
what?
building challenges that the format presents, but I worry that the message the intended audience might learn is that Links were not, in fact, the death knell of the card game that they loved as a kid, and instead they just never really liked it in the first place. Thank you guys for listening. I hope that you enjoyed today's video. Make sure to like if you liked, leave a comment if there's anything you have to say, subscribe if you want to hear more, and remember to wash behind your ears.
I think this was an interesting video because it is drawing a parallel with specifically Genesis format, and where Genesis format creates this super divisive crossroads where you, as a Yugi boomer or old head, will look at something like Genesis and be like, yep, this is the solution to the game. You just delete all of these like modern mechanics like Link and Pendulum, and you go back to the good old days of Xyz and Synchros. And then you sit down and actually play the format. And a lot of these people who had this initial complaint will realize actually Genesis format is very fast. It is very quick. It is very combo based. There isn't as much back and forth as you think there is. Therefore, you can reach the conclusion that Link summoning and Pendulum summoning, etc., were not the death knell of the game and were not the causes of the major issues in Yu-Gi-Oh! But rather, Yu-Gi-Oh! Itself inherently has quickened its pace and developed into such a way where it has created, you know, turn one wombo combo strategies and et cetera, et cetera. And that's like one of the main complaints that a lot of people have about like current state of Genesis, for example. I always like to refer to Thunder Theory's recent analysis on Twitter going over the Genesis format, and he literally came to the conclusion that Genesis turn one is too good. In fact, comparatively to the TCG, not like, you know, comparing a board but a versus a board, but like in the context within their respective formats, Genesis is actually sometimes harder to win going second compared to ranked, which is crazy. I say ranked, advanced format. So yeah, it is an interesting parallel to draw there. He is like I guess you would say he's objectively right. Yes, like Link summoning is not the cause and problem for that. I would personally argue and say that Links definitely make it easier for that to be a problem. Now the issue that I have with Genesis, at least in the context of power creep and speed of the game and stuff like that, it's that the marketing side of Genesis is not really going to be conducive to balancing the format. The best points is like Radiant Typhoon is completely untouched, if I'm not mistaken. Like totally untouched. Half of the top cut in the last Genesis format tournament we did, which was 160 players, half of top cut was runic Radiant Typhoon variants, because it's a new deck. They want to promote the new product. Onomat is also pretty criminally underpointed as well. And those are decks that a lot of Yugi boomers and old heads would maybe complain about whenever they sit down to duel against them. But anyway, it's going to be a subjective thing, right? Like, naturally, you are just going to love or hate Link summoning, irrespective of the design perspective. It's just maybe like a vibes thing. It's also like an aesthetic. People do sometimes gravitate towards these things backwards and forwards, depending on whether or not they actually like the all of the above. For me personally, I'm not a big fan of link summoning at all, as I mentioned at the start of the video. But you know, I don't like hate it at all. I just think the game was better before. But you know, shut the fuck up. I love that he pinned that. That's like the pin of shame. I gotta do that more often. Just the most toxic comment on your video, just pin it and love react it. We got a boomer here. Oh man, that sounds like a boomer. Least angry YouTuber. Bro got burned by Master Rule 4 and never recovered. I appreciate you saying you're an Alta Guys player right from the gate, because I couldn't find any holes in your argument, so I really needed a reason to disregard the entire video. Good point. Alright, go check out his channel, subscribe to him if you haven't already. This is actually a really well put together video, so shout outs to Faker yugioh. That's the Korean player from League of Legends, right? That's his channel? Sounds a lot different than I remember. Bye-bye.